Outwintering young stock and dry cows can be a cost-effective means of managing these animals over the winter period. Recent research funded by AHDB Dairy and conducted by Harper Adams University has shown that, if managed correctly, the cost of rearing replacement heifers over the winter period can be reduced by as much as 50% without any effect on subsequent fertility or animal performance. This difference in cost usually comes from lower capital costs and from lower feed costs, which are typically 20 to 30% lower. However, to achieve the benefit of these cost savings, it is important that young stock are managed carefully to achieve their target live weight gain, or, in the case of dry cows, to achieve their target body condition score at calving. In the Planning Your Feeding film, we have considered how to calculate feed requirements over the winter for both grazed and supplementary feeds to meet animal performance targets. However, it is vitally important to closely monitor animal progress against these targets. This should ideally be done every 2 weeks for all animals on the farm, but it is particularly important with outwintered animals, as environmental challenges such as poor weather can impact upon performance. Live weight gains and changes in body condition score should be monitored every 2 weeks. During the outwintering period, it is also important to review and allocate forage on a daily basis. Abrupt changes in the animal's diet can result in a reduction in dry matter intake and hinder animal performance. It is therefore important to transition animals slowly onto any new forage crop. This can be done slowly over a 3-week period by gradually increasing the proportion of the outwintered crop from 25% of dry matter intake in week 1 to 50% in week 2 and 70% of total dry matter intake by week 3. For young stock grazing a beet crop for the first time, there is often a period at the beginning of outwintering where the animals will consume a small amount of the crop, predominantly the leaf. Some farmers choose to include animals with more experience of grazing forage crops, such as mature dry cows, in with a group of young stock to show them how to graze the forage. In addition to a changing diet, the very nature of outwintering brings with it wet and cold weather conditions, and this can impact on animal performance. The lower critical temperature is the temperature at which an animal loses heat faster than they can produce it. This results in either the mobilization of body fat to produce extra energy or a need to increase dry matter intake. The lower critical temperature will vary with the animal's age, live weight, coat length and body condition. For a newborn calf, the lower critical temperature in dry conditions is 15 degrees centigrade. In comparison, a mature dry cow in dry conditions can withstand temperatures down to minus 14 degrees centigrade before additional energy is required to maintain body temperature. However, the biggest cause of heat loss is the evaporation of water from a wet coat, which can be exacerbated by the wind. As a consequence, wet and windy conditions can cause the lower critical temperature to rise. For example, as wind speed rises, lower critical temperature of a mature cow with a dry coat can rise from minus 14 degrees centigrade to plus 14 degrees centigrade. Similarly, with a wet coat in conditions with no wind, lower critical temperature of a mature cow can be as high as plus 3 degrees centigrade. Throughout the outwintering period, the animal will adapt to colder temperatures. A recent study conducted by AHDB Dairy on 9 commercial farms showed that hair length on animals increased 20% during a 3-month outwintering period, giving them better capacity to deal with lower temperatures. However, it is also important to have a strategy to deal with these wetter and colder conditions during the outwintering period. One of the most common strategies to manage animals under these conditions is to increase the amount of dry matter that is allocated. This can be achieved by increasing the amount of forage that is provided, supplementary feeds, or the provision of additional concentrates. If choosing to increase the amount of grazing forage, it is important to ensure that the amount of supplementary feeds still provides at least 30% of the total dry matter intake. In addition to increasing dry matter allocation, increasing shelter provisions by moving animals to a different field, A well-sheltered standoff pad or housing can be effective ways of reducing the lower critical temperature and the need for additional feedstuffs. Shelter should protect the cattle from a number of wind directions and should extend to about 0.5 to 1 metre above cow height. It should also be well drained and dry out quickly after rain. Regular monitoring of animals during this period is also essential to ensure that dry matter intakes are being maintained. If a subset of animals are underperforming, it is worthwhile considering managing these as a separate group with increased forage allocation or housing them. It is also important to ensure that there is a dry lying area during the winter months. This can be a grass run-back area, a well-drained standoff pad, or additional straw bedding in an area of the field. Frost conditions can also present a nutritional challenge for animals grazing forage crops. Grazing frosted crops can increase the risk of bloat, and it is thought that frosted plant cells may become more fragile and break down more quickly in the rumen. Waiting for the frost to lift and feeding more fibre can reduce the risk of frost bloat. When grazing root crops, animals can ingest as much as 1 to 1.5 kilograms of soil per head per day, so it is important to consider any potential risks that may be presented from clostridial or soil-borne diseases. The farm herd health plan should also take into account the outwintering period. Outwintered cattle may be at risk of reinfection of fluke and worms after dozing in autumn, and a treatment against both adult and immature fluke and nematodes may be required in December to January. Talk to your vet for more information.